All right, let's hopefully the world is out there. Apologize again for the technical challenges. This is the 35th meeting of the Board of Lake County Commissioners. Let's see, with all those who are willing and able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Grant us, O Lord, light to our understanding, prudence in our investigating, foresight in our planning, sincerity in our deliberating, the grace to follow truth in our judgment. Help us to be moved in our decision, neither by fear nor by self-interest, and to do our work faithfully. May we respect the authority vested in us, for thou art the source of all authority. And may we use our directives for the common good, and for thy honor and glory. Amen.
Thank you all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young. Here. Commissioner Plechnik.
Present.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Here. Okay, we have before us the meeting minutes of April 29, August 5, August 12, and August 17. Do we have a motion to approve same, waiving reading thereof?
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. Okay, this brings us to our first public comment portion. What I'd like to do, move the, you okay to move those up to the front there?
When we get to resolutions.
Resolutions, okay. Okay, then we shall hold to, you all set? Okay. Our usual format, this is our first public comment portion. Anyone wishing to address this board may do so at this time. Mr. Massey. Thank you.
That's right.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive. I'm here on behalf of a Lake County citizen by the name of Dave Black. Mr. Black asked me to ask the Commissioners. He was here a couple, maybe 2-3 sessions ago, and he proposed requesting a resolution on the, I believe it was the vaccine mandate. He's wondering if the Commissioners had thought about it. And he was also asking me about the, do the Commissioners believe in the Constitution and the Redress of Grievances. So I'm here on behalf of Mr. Black to ask if there is, are the Commissioners thinking about trying to support him, with a resolution on the vaccine mandate, or if not, why not, and so that I can pass it along to him.
I believe what he brought to us was a request for some sort of nullification of the federal prohibition on litigation for vaccinations, I believe, relating to children. And at that time, we talked about, has this been done anywhere else in the nation? I can say that I did verify. I looked at it. Dave had mentioned he's not aware of it. I have not been able to find where any other state, let alone a county, has ever engaged that.
Mm-hmm.
I know we passed it on to our prosecutor's office. Mr. Hackman, did you want to enlighten?
Well, I do remember when Mr. Black was here, and it's been a little while.
Your microphone, sir, I don't know if it's on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I do remember when Mr. Black was here. It's been a while since I reviewed the paperwork, but the bottom line is it has no legal force and effect on this Board of Commissioners. And they have no authority over the federal law and the issues that he brought up.
Okay, so when we're talking about redress of grievances, just so that I understand, if there is an issue with the state, let's say the state is, if the citizens think that the state is violating any part of the state constitution, we have the right, under the state constitution, to offer a redress of grievances saying that we don't like what you're doing. Is that incumbent upon the citizens to go to the state legislature, the state officials, or do we go to the commissioners, or the commissioners, if the commissioners are an extension of the state? It seems to me, and the commissioners are required to act in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code. It seems to me that the citizens should be able to go the other way also if there is and in Mr. Black's case, if it is a federal thing, I understand, but if it was a state issue with the state constitution, would we be able to go to the commissioners to say, we want your help, commissioners, for a redress of grievances against what we consider a state violation of the state constitution? Have I got that correct? Do I understand that correctly?
I'm not sure I understand it, so let me just try and
And if it is more appropriate to, do it offline, I'd be glad to do that. But I think many people would really like to understand that.
well, I guess I get back to the creature of statute that this Board of Commissioners is. And it's created by statute. They only have the powers given to them or reasonably inferred by the statutes. So, could the commissioners impact or change things on the state level with a resolution?
Mhm.
No. You can reach out to your state representative, congressional representatives for federal issues.
So I understand that for federal issues, I'm just thinking about for state issues. And I know this is supposed to be a short segment, and I don't need to take too much time, but if it is an issue with the state constitution, whatever the issue is, that you're saying that we must go through our state legislators, in my case it would be Mr. Callender, and we cannot go to the county commissioners because it seems like it only works one way then, that they are only required to follow, the only power that they have is actually following the Ohio Revised Code. They can't go upstream, if I can use that expression, to help the taxpayers with a state issue.
They have no impact on that. But there's also the potential for referendums if you want to change the state constitution. That's certainly an option. It's a steep hill to climb, I think. I don't know all
Yeah, I
the details
understand.
involved.
I can't imagine just getting signatures for that.
So,
Yeah, I understand that that is a challenge. So basically, the doctrine of lesser magistrates really then doesn't hold any water. So what I have been told and or been reading about, it's really just that goes back into the 1800s and doesn't apply in today's world. The doctrine of lesser magistrates is that the citizens, if they feel that they have been unjustly served by a political body, they can go to their township trustees, their councilmen, or to the commissioners to seek some help up the food chain. But I'm thinking that's not really possible at all. All we're saying, what you're telling me is we can only do it through a referendum process and not through the power of a county commissioner office.
I'm not saying only through the referendum process.
I don't want to.
Without researching it thoroughly,
Right.
but yes, what I am saying is that this Board of Commissioners cannot dictate what the state does or change the Constitution by way of resolution.
I understand, okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just, I think that these are things you should probably discuss outside of the meeting with.
Very good, I'll do that.
Dave would be willing to hang with us for a while.
Okay.
after the meeting.
But if I may add to that, though, this is a good question, because this does come up more often than not. People seem to think that the commissioners have some superpowers over the state, and we do not. Again, we hear the word creature of statute. In many cases, we have the same power and authority that you as a citizen have. We may know some more phone numbers, we may know some more contacts, so we're a great reference. We can be an advocate, but to be taking on federal issues and going back to Mr. Black's request to nullify a federal law. I'm pretty sure Commissioner Colson, wow, there's a Freudian slip. Prosecutor Colson would probably not be welcoming an assignment to take on federal law, and hey, can you divert endless resources to taking this on? And I won't ask you to speculate, sorry, that's.
I would tell you he would, this board has no authority to do that, which you're suggesting.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. Appreciate it.
Mr.
Thank you,
President,
sir. Yes, sir.
if I could just add, there are so many issues that as citizens we care about deeply, and I know that each of the commissioners has their own opinions on them. And it's not wrong for a citizen or a resident to come here, express themselves, and ask for our help. But I will say, in my experience, you usually have a greater chance of influencing another elected official by reaching out to them in a non-political way, where they have an opportunity to change their mind, admit they're wrong, consider the alternatives without being browbeat. So I would say that sometimes I can be more influential talking to the congressman, the state rep, the state senator on your behalf if I actually reach out to them and say, this is something I'm hearing from a lot of residents at our meetings, this is coming up in the community, but if you pass a resolution, which, as our prosecutor's office has said, has no legal weight, it's just a statement that's very public, but a statement nonetheless, you might actually be shooting yourself in the foot because those other elected officials say, well, you're trying to force me, browbeat me, and people can get very defensive. So I think we should acknowledge that where we don't have the legal authority to act, but we're really just persuaders or advocates, more often than not, you're going to catch more flies with honey. You're going to get an ear. You're going to get an ear from someone who's serious about listening to you. If you approach them as a fellow neighbor and resident and say, listen, state rep, congressman, this is a real concern, as opposed to commissioners, demand that such and such happen. And I'm not saying it's never wrong. I was the one who introduced the resolution in support of the Second Amendment. I felt that that was a national issue with serious local implications. But the Constitution of the United States is one thing. Every individual statute in the U.S. Code is another. And I have an opinion on a lot of code sections, U.S. and Ohio. And if I passed a resolution on every single one of them, we just have to hire 30 clerks full time and never adjourn the meeting. And I think that our clerk of the commission is thinking with dread about that possibility. But I just want to say that whether the commissioners can come to a consensus to pass a resolution or not is only one way that we advocate on behalf of residents. And more often than not, I've found that I've been more effective reaching out directly. Just as you reach out to me, I reach out to our state rep, or state senator, or congressperson, and having a conversation with them as opposed to making a political statement and trying to browbeat them one way or the other. I'm not saying it's never wrong to. Sometimes taking a stand publicly is the right call, but I do believe we should take into account that a lot of advocacy is most effective when you're legitimately negotiating, talking with, reaching out to someone, as opposed to just saying, here's how it is.
Okay, and just to be clear, talking with legal, to the best of your recollection, the request from Mr. Black was outside the scope and authority of this board. We would not be able to effect the change that was requested.
Correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure. Brian, did that answer your question
Absolutely.
satisfactorily?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay, anyone else, sir? I believe you. Did you wish to address the board?
That was number 3, but number 2 is here. I will.
Oh, okay.
No, it was number 2. I should probably be. Go ahead.
Oh.
Go ahead. I'm gonna wait till the end. It was number 2. That's right. Go ahead. You might get.
It's so refreshing
I
having
don't
people
mind
jockeying
trying.
for position.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. My name is Tim O'Keefe. I live at 38661 Edward Walsh Drive, Willoughby, Ohio. I came before you a few weeks ago asking that a particular resolution that was passed by the Commissioners Court back on March 24th, 2020, that be rescinded. And the resolution in question is, quote, resolution declaring a state of emergency due to COVID-19 in Lake County, Ohio, end quote. So I asked that it be rescinded because after my review of it, it was clear to me that it didn't apply to today. And of course, in my mind, I wasn't quite sure it applied before. It certainly doesn't apply today. At that time, County Commissioner Pleshnik asked that it be looked into by a county employee to see if there was any downside to it, in particular, in the rescinding of it, any downside to it, in particular, any financial downside. And I read the statement by the employee, and the good news is for the folks of Lake County, there is neither a compelling reason nor a quantified reason to maintain this particular resolution. And therefore, I would ask of you please, once again, to rescind that resolution in question. And I thank you so much for your time.
While you're here, if I could, because I got a ton of emails on this subject of a similar ilk. May I ask, what is it that you think this resolution does? Because some of the emails that I've gotten seem to think that it confers or infers some things that it absolutely does not. I'm hoping that you can help educate us as to what you or the public is thinking this document actually means.
Right. My take on it,
Yes, sir.
as a father of 5, from 9 to 18 years of age, okay, this is my takeaway, is that for the last 18 months, my wife and I have woken up wondering who is going to throw a wrench into our lives today vis-a-vis COVID-19. Is it going to be the Ohio Department of Health? Is it going to be the CDC? Is it going to be the Lake County General Health District? Is it going to be the high school? Is it going to be the grade school? It just goes on, right? And in the last week, when we've woken up, we've had the following entities throw a wrench into our life. Ohio State, Diocese of Cleveland, Lake Catholic High School, okay, Willoughby East Lake School System. And so, from a layman's perspective, I look upon this document as back in March of 20, granting legitimacy, at least from the Commissioner's Court, to acting in a particular way or having concerns about a particular thing, in particular COVID-19. And so I myself see this document as adding to concern, adding attention to something that doesn't exist today. And it gives local entities another reason to act in a way that is unnecessary, right? And so I just see this as being a document that is unnecessary, that simply unnecessarily adds a credence to a situation that doesn't exist, right?
Okay.
In particular, that COVID-19 is a danger to Lake Health, to Lake County, to the point where hospitals will be jammed and people will die because they can't get service at a hospital. We're nowhere close to that, and so I think it's time to back away and to rescind the resolution. That's my take on it, Mr. Commissioner.
No, that's very helpful. And if we could have a moment of dialogue.
Oh, sure.
Congratulations, you're not going to be the face of helping us. One of the things that I'm big on is making sure that we're all on the same page in the same book. I know Commissioner Young, with his years in the legislature, we have a college professor here. This document does none of that. Think in terms of an emergency situation. You've got your obvious boots on the ground activities on the finance side. And I've been watching the communications going back and forth with Commissioner Pleshnik. One of the things that we have to take into account, though, is unanticipated or unforeseen financial requirements to have such a document. To give you an example, by definition, if we could give you the example, it wouldn't be unanticipated or unforeseen. Let's just set that financial component of any emergency response system aside, though. But that is something that's still active. We're in that recovery phase on the finance side. I'm doing air quotes here for a reason. There's all these gobbledygook terms of art. I'm going to look to legal on this one. But another practical thing is we do have vaccination efforts continuing. By having this in place, it does allow our EMTs and our paramedics to participate in that process. They would not have that authority without this. So we don't have enough nursing staff in the county to be able to handle that. So that's a practical example of this. This does not give the authority to anybody to mandate masks. It does not give anybody the authority to mandate vaccinations. none of those concerns come from this document. The reason I use the word specifically, it does not confer or infer. I'm looking to legal. If I'm saying something that's not correct, please tell me, but this does not give superpowers to anybody to do any of those concerns. This literally is just a ministerial document that allows us to do the things that we need to do. One of the other features is if we have to acquire purchasing, it gives our administrator the authority to act and to set a somewhat higher spending threshold. Some of these things are very expensive. We need to get something in a pinch, or right now he has that authority. So those are, again, some practical examples, and that actually, I believe, is in the body of the document. Yeah, it is in the body of the document. And literally, if it's not spelled out in here, it doesn't do it. And I feel what you're saying. I read the emails and I see the passion. There was an email from a school teacher who was taking a very concerned perspective, and I was looking forward to our conversation because I think this sets the stage to say it doesn't do that. Commissioner Young, Commissioner Plechnik, or if you disagree, tell me now.
Yeah, respond.
Yes.
And so, when you talk about the term unanticipated, if you produce something because of the possibility that it might be useful in the future, then how do we get along with it before March 24th of 2020? I suspect the county survived. And if having something is because it might be anticipated for use in the future, then let's produce a ton of documents in anticipation that they might be used or not. So if I might be on the blunt side, is that to retain something because it might be anticipated for the future, that means we can just have an ongoing process of producing things because it's unspecific as to what it might serve in the future. Or you say something that's unanticipated. Well, specifically, what is unanticipated, and can that which is unanticipated be fulfilled or be helped by something else beside this document? My point, I would imagine that whatever that is unanticipated, we should quantify it, and whatever that happens to be is can it get along fine without this document? I suspect it could, because we've gotten along fine without this document from March of last year. And when it comes to your other reasoning was, forgive me, go ahead. The last one, dealt with, I believe the last one, dealt with, using it to the paramedics and such. Now, let me ask you this, is that without this document, those EMTs you're referring to, who are the employees of?
The individual agencies employing them, the individual fire departments, for example.
Well, certainly their EMTs can perform these duties without this resolution, can they not?
They cannot. That's what we're getting from the Ohio Department of Health. That's what we're getting from our Lake County Department of Health.
And are these EMTs still providing, these EMT services by the fire departments, are they still providing inoculation services as we speak, vaccinations for COVID-19 as we speak?
They are gearing up for the upcoming, and if I don't say this precisely, please don't beat me about the head and face if I don't use the right language.
I have a wife and 5 kids.
Then you know where I'm going.
You have my forgiveness.
There are preparations. Our health district is gearing up, and I'll look to legal if I'm, again, just speaking. I'm not speaking on behalf of the health district. I'm just based on what they've shared with our mayors and managers and other meetings. They are gearing up for the boosters. They're gearing up to deal with the unvaccinated, our equity community in particular. So these activities, there are more people than there are nurses. So this is, we're partnering, as we have in the past, with our fire departments has been essential.
And let me be specific. And so
Yes,
my question is that without this resolution, you're telling me, if I understand correctly, is that to the best of your knowledge, these EMTs that work for the fire departments throughout the county, they could not provide vaccinations to the public without this resolution?
That's my understanding, yes.
And given to us by who?
I'm sorry?
And given to us by who, the ODH? Who provided that insight?
That was Ohio Department of Health, as well as coming through our Lake County General Health District.
Okay, all right. And so that's their intention, okay? And so the Ohio Department of Health and the local health district, they're certain that that other than EMTs cannot handle this level of vaccinations? Because we don't have enough nurses? You're saying that we have a compelling reason to use the EMTs to provide vaccinations?
I believe the answer would be yes.
All right. And then the last one dealt with bidding in the future.
Yes.
But help me understand, if we did have this resolution, surely we could bid for things in the future just fine. We always have until this point. Tell me specifically with how future bidding for equipment, I'm assuming, is helped by this resolution.
Well, if I give you an example, timeliness. There are, if I could just read its item B, exempt from the competitive bidding process purchases related to the emergency that are greater than $50,000 but less than $100,000, so long as no fewer than 3 informal estimates are obtained. Look to legal on that. That is substantial, that if we needed to bring in additional supplies or resources, that as you say, quantifies.
That's correct, and the Ohio Revised Code requires competitive bidding for anything above $50,000. And it's Revised Code Section 307.86, where they also have an emergency provision where it can be up to $100,000 without competitive bidding.
All right, and so what do you foresee we would have to get bids on that's over $50,000 to take care of COVID-19?
Well, I'm not trying to make a joke here. This is my first pandemic.
Same here.
So I can talk to you, like, for example, a train derailment we had many years ago. That was something that we could look to in other parts of the country and say, hey, here are the typical things that you could expect. We could adopt practices and assimilate lessons learned. This one,
So this is an open question. And so out of the 3 examples that you gave me, one we can quantify. The last one, to be quite frank with you, you can't quantify. It's pure speculation that we would have a need for $50,000 or more to respond to COVID-19. So that to me is, to be quite frank with you, is a non-issue. So the only thing out of the 3 being able to quantify so far is allowing EMTs and fire departments to provide COVID-19 vaccinations because hospitals cannot get the job done. And that might be compelling enough to keep the resolution in place, right? Which is perfectly fine. The other 2, they don't persuade me, maybe, right? But I'm not on the commissioner court either, right? So that being said, I'm done presenting my side, but I'm willing to chat with you a bit more if you have any additional follow-up questions or remarks.
as an example, testing equipment. I know our health district, one of the things that they had talked about at last mayor's and manager's discussion had to do with lab equipment. That purchase will likely be over $50,000.
And when will that occur?
That's
It's pure speculation.
well, no, not pure, please don't put words in my mouth.
That was my take on it.
No, please don't look at it as speculation. They're researching what is the best equipment, and I can say this with certainty. They're looking at purchasing equipment that's not going to be obsolete in 3 months. They're looking at stuff that's going to be supported by the manufacturer, because I think we can all agree that there was an awful lot of stuff pushed into the market that may or may not be supported. I'll give you an example of ventilators. Everybody who could put 2 pieces of sheet metal together was making ventilators and throwing them out there. What's the support behind those? So I do know that that's one of the things that our health district is researching. Certified equipment, manufacturer, data service life, expected service life of the equipment. So I don't want to say speculation, they're engaging in due diligence. I know that our hospitals, formerly Lake Health, now University, their testing capacity is being limited. I know that our health district has exhausted their supply of testing packets now. So there's a lot of moving parts going on behind the scenes. So that, again, I'm trying to give you an example that I'm personally familiar with to help give you something. I'm not trying to give a little give and take. You've been very generous with your candor, and I'm trying to do the same. So if that helps.
And so if I might inquire,
Yes.
so it hasn't been an occasion since March of 20, since this resolution was signed, hasn't been an occasion since March of 20 where the health district went out and spent more than $50,000 on equipment.
Yes,
And they expect that to occur again
very likely.
for COVID-19.
very likely.
Okay, is that in writing from the health district?
In writing?
Yes.
No, Jason, do we have, I don't believe.
In writing and quantified. And let me explain why, if I may.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, this is why I'm being rather particular.
No,
So
that's fine.
Please understand, is that, once again, once this thing kicked off 18 months ago, what myself and others, especially those with children or grandchildren under the roof, what we have seen and what we've experienced continuously, unfortunately, are entities that are using imprecise language, using words like surge, etc., using imprecise language, non-quantified language, to pass the buck on who's responsible for this protocol or that protocol. And they take delight in doing that. And now it's gotten to the point where after 18 months, anybody that can fog the mirror who's well-informed,
Sorry, that was actually pretty good.
thank you, who would be like that, and who are well-informed, they've grown frustrated with this pass the buck, deny accountability, blame somebody else for their actions, and use unquantified language. Okay? Now, if one has kids, it's off the charts. Because now you're dealing with folks who are involved with the education establishment, and there are school boards and superintendents that love to blame the health district. And the health district steps back and says, we can't mandate. I could go on and on,
Right.
but you know where I'm driving with this.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that is this lack of specificity for the last 18 months has begun to prompt parents, especially of school-age kids, into anger and resentment toward the entities that touch their lives.
Yeah.
And so the reason that I'm asking for specificity is not to take it out on the commissioner's courts, because for 18 months, lack of specificity, pass the buck,
Yep, yep.
has turned our lives upside down, to say the least. And to be quite frank with you, I've grown tired of it,
Sure.
but I'm far from being alone. So I hope you understand, when I ask for specifics and legal specifics, that's where the public, especially those with kids, have arrived at, thanks to those who want to pass the buck and not be accountable. So please don't take it personally.
No, you're,
Right? I'm not questioning your
Mhm.
commitment to facts, but I have grown tired of those entities. This is my second opportunity to visit with you gentlemen in the last 3 weeks. But unfortunately, other entities that my wife and I have been interacting with for the last 18 months, tell the public, if I might use these 2 words, 3, we are fed up. Right?
and that's fair.
So please understand. Okay?
No, and this, going back to our earlier discussion with Mr. Massey regarding Mr. Black, this is an example of redress of grievance. You have a grievance with this resolution. This is something that we can talk about. And this, I think, is the proper venue to do that in public, because there's so many other people that have a direct interest in what we're saying. I can't possibly talk to all the people, and if I responded to every single email, I would never get any work done.
Right.
But this opportunity is phenomenal. I can give you an example of, the CDC. They put out some guidance, and our health district takes that guidance and they push it out. And in less than 24 hours, I think it was actually 4 hours, the one example that was shared, it was countermanded. And I think it was Dr. Patel had signed off, and there was a big brouhaha. I believe Health Commissioner Ron Graham, they're now not putting out those documents in that way. They adapted. They said, hey, this is making us look terrible. They're trying to be very specific and responsive. I know school boards and school districts are trying to have the most accurate information possible, and you're running into challenges.
I have that effect on my wife.
But to your bottom line point, though, again, and I'm going to look to legal. This is not conferring or inferring any special powers. So no mandates can come from this.
That's correct. And I guess I would like to just add in one thing. And
Please, sir.
Mr. O'Keefe, we met a few weeks ago. You've had nothing but cordial in our limited dealings, and I appreciate the fact that you're a concerned parent. With regard to, and I hope I don't want to misstate what you said, but I thought you said something along the lines of there's no financial downside to undoing this declaration of emergency.
That's been my takeaway so far, yes.
Okay. There is one issue that's still hanging out there, and that's the ARPA money, American Rescue Plan. The county's sitting on $44 million.
44.7.
Over $40 million. And the final rule on the expenditure, the allowable expenditures, has yet to come out. We think it's prudent to maintain the emergency in case that's a requirement within the ARPA final guidelines.
Right. And if you be so kind as to explain to those who are here what that ARP, what ARP is, just for the benefit of those who are here.
Well,
In thumbnail sketch.
wasn't ready for that dissertation, but
The thumbnail sketch is all.
there's certain, it's a long list, but there's also issues out there. Infrastructure, COVID
And the federal
related.
dollars.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
so in essence, they're federal dollars for various entities to respond to COVID-19. I think we can agree on something as generic as that. School district, Willow East Lake got about $7.7 million. We got $44 million for the county.
Over 2 years, 44.7
It's a
million.
stunning number. We're going to spend 44. But then again, as I said to a friend of mine, you can kick out that kind of money when you just print it or create it on a computer. But don't get me going down that road. So it's easy to produce those kind of dollars. And it's my hope that and that sounds prudent, I would use that word with you, David, if I may. And I understand that, but I hope that $40 million, we just don't spend it and get on that gravy train by the federal government. We ought not to spend it unless we need it, right? And I'll leave it at that.
Mr. President,
Sir,
I want to share a couple of thoughts. And once again, this is me speaking for me, not the entire board. With respect to the American Recovery Plan money, which some people call ARP or ARPA money, I think you gave a fair construal that it's sold as money in response to COVID-19, but when you read through what it is allowable for, it expands beyond that. Certain types of infrastructure, water and sewer lines, broadband internet access are also thrown in. So there's quite a few different political categories in that bill. But Mr. Hackman is correct. We're still waiting for the final guidance. We have at least one staff member on every panel, every release from the federal government, awaiting with bated breath for what those rules are. And we can't really, nor can Willoughby Eastlake, nor can the city of Mentor, nor can any other locality spend that money until we have a sense of what those rules are. So I think there is a genuine concern that since the stated reason for the bill is that this is supposed to be some sort of response to COVID-19, even though there's a lot of pork mixed into it as well, that there could be a negative impact to keeping either the first tranche or second tranche of funding in those rules if we were to make some statement that we have no need with respect to COVID-19. And we only have half of it so far. It's paid in 2 years, so I believe the county is in receipt of about 22 of the 44 million. The second 22 is scheduled to be paid to us, I believe, next year. We have to commit that funding, at least in the interim rules, by 2024 and expend it by 2026. But outside of that, we don't have a great deal of information. And when you talk about the ability to quantify, we're even more strapped in that respect, because if you look at the CARES Act, which was essentially part one of this funding, they had one set of rules in the beginning, and then Congress amended them dramatically at the end. And so we're concerned with the final rules from the Treasury Department. We're also concerned with what amendments may or may not pass. And so from my perspective, there are kind of two things that I want to avoid, which I view as kind of worst case scenarios. One is that in any way we disadvantage the county, not just with respect to that money, but any future infrastructure or other bills. And when I say future, I mean near to short term. I'm not talking about decades from now, but we know that Congress is continuing to weigh drastic spending plans. And while if I were a congressman, I wouldn't be thrilled with the idea of printing money until we're broke, I'm not a congressman. I'm not a state rep. I'm not a state senator. I'm not making those big spending decisions. But I do have a fiduciary duty to Lake County to make sure that if massive amounts of money are spent, at least that money is coming back here rather than going to a different county. So I'm worried about losing that funding because we've made some kind of affirmative statement that we have no related need. I'm also worried about a situation, the other worst case scenario, where we would have to repass this resolution to try to get funding or to allow the EMTs or other county employees to interact or work together. Because I think that that could cause an unnecessary sense of panic that something changed, something's terrible, when in reality we're taking a bureaucratic measure so that Lake County taxpayers aren't disadvantaged relative to Geauga County or Portage County or Cuyahoga County taxpayers. And that's entirely possible, that we could see in the final Treasury regulations that there has to be an official resolution or county statement that there is an ongoing need, and then we revoke it and have to pass it. And I can tell you, county commissioners pass emergency resolution will be a very big headline, and people will interpret it in ways that we would not want, even with the footnote, we're only doing this because the county wants to get its $44 million just like every other county in the state of Ohio. While I don't think this massive federal spending is prudent, I also don't think it's fair that Lake County taxpayers would be the only ones who don't have it. And I agree that we shouldn't be spending this money with the idea that we're going to have $44 million every 2 years. I don't think we will. I think that the federal government is reaching the end of what even it can do, and at a certain point, either inflation or debt service payments will be a limiting factor. So I think we're reaching that ceiling, whether we like it as a society or not. I'm very concerned with what that looks like. So that's why I feel strongly that we need to know as much as possible before any of that money is spent. And I've said here, I want to spend it on one-time investments rather than on ongoing operational expenses, because it won't be there forever. And if we're taking this money, and I frankly think that the President and the Congress are stealing this money from our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, I think we need to look at investments in Lake County that will last long enough that those grandchildren will be able to take advantage of them. So I'm hopeful that in the final regulations, we'll be in a position to spend this money on long-term investments for the county that children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren will have some benefit from. Giving raises or hiring positions with it, spending it in the here and now, using it for operating costs, I agree that would be wholly imprudent. I just don't want to be in a situation where we either cost the taxpayers money or we're forced to repass this and cause some kind of concern that something has worsened, when in reality this is a technical measure that was passed to take advantage of funding and to allow for expedited or higher bid limits, as well as partnerships with other local, municipal, and county agencies. And I do know with respect to EMTs that they cannot provide medical care on the volunteer stage. They can't just say, well, here I am, I'm putting on my volunteer hat, and I'll leave it to the prosecutor's office to correct me if I'm wrong. But my understanding is, from what I've heard in Willoughby Hills, because we've dealt with some of these issues locally, is they've got to be on the clock so that they're authorized to provide treatment. And that's not necessarily just, vaccination. There are many other issues that may come up where people need specialized care. And originally we were getting additional nurses from the state. Those are gone. So we really are entirely relying on local resources. And even if the firefighter is willing to volunteer, they're not allowed to. So they've got to be on the clock. There has to be mechanisms legally for them to do that. I think that's where the added complication comes in from the EMTs and the firefighters. It's not that they don't want to volunteer. I know they're all willing to do whatever they can do, but they have to be on the clock, which means you have to have an official venue for them to do it. So those are my thoughts. My goal would be to rescind this resolution as soon as possible, when I'm assured that we're not going to get a letter from the federal government saying, congratulations, pay us back $20 million. I mean, that would be a devastating loss to Lake County taxpayers, that every other county in the state is going to receive this enormous amount of federal money. I wish that it wasn't spent in the first place, but I think that Lake County should have its fair share if it's going to happen. And I don't want to either lose that funding or be in a position where we have to do something dramatic like repass this resolution. So at the first instance where I'm told this is not the case, we're confident that we're not going to have a negative financial impact on the county, or that there's any realistic chance that we have to repass this and cause people to think that COVID-19 is rebounding in some way. I think that it's critically important that we have assurance, and I don't know when that will come, but I will continue to research the issue, and I will continue to work with our staff, because I agree with you, we don't want to put out any message that the county is trying to cause a panic. But I also know, as a council person, we always would have the quote-unquote emergency clause in legislation when we needed something to take effect immediately. It's a really unfortunately named clause, but under state law, if you want to pass a law immediately, you have to include an emergency clause. And I used to have residents come and say, how could you possibly say that this is an emergency? A house isn't burning down. And I would agree, but this bill needs to be paid now, not within 30 days. It's an unfortunate label to say emergency, when what we're really saying is we want to be eligible for federal funding. We want to have the ability for county and municipal organizations to work together when needed. I'm not sure that's the best word for it, but sometimes the law requires you to use a word that doesn't always have the same associated meaning. So I am absolutely open to being corrected and learning that now is the time when we can rescind the resolution without any negative effects. But as a fiduciary of the taxpayers' money, I can't take even a small chance that we could cost this county $40-some million. I have to be assured that we're not going to have a serious negative impact, because I don't want that money going back to California or Maryland or some other place.
That's a fair concern. I received yesterday the reply from the county commissioner's employee who looked into the possible negative consequences. Okay, just received it yesterday. And this mention of it here, the ARP money, was not in that email to me. So this is the first I've heard of having ARP money taken from the county. This is the first I've heard of it as being a negative financial consequence of rescinding this resolution. So to put it another way, this is news to me, right? And so I hope that you folks stay on this, right? Because does it stun any of us here that the federal government says, here's free money, and then they position it in such a way with the below the headline verbiage that makes it oh so tempting to keep it. Let's spend it on sewers. Let's spend it on something else. And so I hope that this commissioner's court shows extraordinary discipline and only take what is absolutely positively necessary to address COVID-19 needs. And if you do that, that will make you an extraordinary political body in this state and in the country.
Thank you.
Right? Because I have no doubts that our money, the way it's structured, be it with school districts, other entities, if there's room to spend it beyond COVID-19, they're going to run with it. And even though some might say, hey, they dropped it in our laps, let's go ahead and use it. They're using it, they're abusing it, well, forgive me, not abusing it, but they're using it for things that are rather ancillary and below the headlines. I hope we don't follow down that trail, because I think you three gentlemen are better than that. I think the folks of Lake County, Ohio deserve better than that. And if others want to deviate from the headline need of the ARP money or the use of it, let them. We shouldn't follow their way here in Lake County. Right? So I thank you for your time. Any other give and take?
I feel I owe you a little more information. Commissioner Plechik was spot on. They must be on the clock. Our emergency management agency, our EMA director, Joe Busher, also is concerned about rescinding this. There's actually a specific, be it further resolved, that also specifically relates to him. I'll get into that in just a moment. We're also, Lake County is helping with the reimbursement for local fire departments. There's several departments that their budgets will be depleted before the end of the year without these reimbursements. We're trying not to risk screwing up those reimbursements, if I could just be
Sure.
candid.
Sure.
You know, we've got our budget finance director here in the room. I don't know if I say something wrong, like just wave like a madman. There are components of what we're doing. Again, we're in the finance phase of the emergency work. Just make sure the bills are paid, that people are getting reimbursed. A lot of these agencies committed their staff, but they also committed their budgets. And the county's been working closely. You've heard me talk about the mayors and managers. Mayor Dennis Morley from Eastlake, he's been a tremendous partner in all of this and coordinating. Chief Powers has been amazing to work with. We've been checking off, I call it checking off the boxes, making sure that as something comes up, we write it down. Spreadsheets, we've got more documents than you can shake a stick at, and we're trying to make sure that we're not missing something.
Sure.
And I'm sorry.
And if I may,
Yes.
is that point that you just made, neither was that in the document that I received yesterday?
And I regret, the question that you asked though was on the finance side, and we're really working hard to answer your questions fully and
I'll be
completely.
qualified, and I thank you for that further information. So I'm assuming that what we're looking to do is to reimburse those entities such as Eastlake for dollars they spent on COVID-19 action that wasn't originally in their budget.
Let me be very careful how I say this,
Sure.
because all monies are fungible, so I gotta be real careful with how I say this. There were now I'm gonna say it a different way. There were activities that they had engaged in. We'll use Eastlake as an example. Their department engaged in activities in support of a countywide response, mutual aid, if you will, if I can throw that term in there, that they expend monies out of their budget at an accelerated rate.
For COVID-19.
Yes. And that is a reimbursable amount. Am I saying that right, Mike? Mike Natus, our budget director, is giving me a thumbs up there. Those dollars legitimately should go back to that community. They're not going to make money on it, but they're not going to lose money on it. But right now, they're funneling that effort through us, the county. And again, we don't want to screw that up.
Right, and that's a fair reason, an understandable reason. But again, news to me.
A fair benefit. Yes, and that's why this was beyond the scope of a simple email exchange. Yeah. And in fairness, it's also beyond a simple phone call, because there's so many other interested people who have almost identical concerns. And again, I go back to the lady who's the teacher. Her email was so passionate, I could hear her words. You know, I don't know who this person is, but I just, when I'm reading it, you could just, when you read something,
Sure.
you can feel the passion that the person's putting into it, the sincerity. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this document doesn't do any of that. But I knew you were coming today. By the way, thank you for the courtesy of saying, hey, I'll be here today. Gave us a chance to have copies of things. It helps by having this dialogue with you. It's like having a dialogue with hundreds of other people. So
My
that
wife doesn't listen to me. There's no hope that they will.
we have a support group. We'll look at it. But one of the things, if I could read be it further resolved, the Lake County Board of Commissioners reserve the right to request the Lake County Emergency Management Agency Director or his or her designee to activate the Lake County Emergency Operations Center partially, fully, or virtually for the required operational period of the emergency in order to coordinate response efforts. Now that sounds kind of benign, and it generally is, but if something popped, that facility is there, and by having that language in there, it immediately, we don't have to kind of go through all these machinations to make it fit into the response, it's already there. Does that make some sense?
And again, my point being is I hope it's used for COVID-19
Oh, sure.
and it's not spent on anything other than that, and the money is returned as quickly as possible to the federal government.
Returned?
Returned, that which is not spent.
Okay.
That which is not spent.
Okay, yeah, this is not a loan, this money is,
Yeah.
Mike, I'm clear on this, right? That is not a loan, okay.
That which is not spent, I hope it goes back to the federal government.
Sure, and I can assure you, I think Commissioner Young actually got an award for being the fiscal hawk when he was down in Columbus. I'm pretty sure that we're not going to have to worry about Commissioner Young out there yelling, woo-hoo.
Mr. President?
Sir.
Just to put some meat on the bone, when you're talking about those reimbursable expenses so that we can relate back to what they are, that goes back to the EMTs and the firefighters. And when the cities had their EMTs and firefighters help, with COVID, with significant COVID-19 related work. That's part of what we're applying for reimbursement for. So it actually relates back to that initial issue. And the county is responsible, agreed to apply for the reimbursement for all the different municipalities, from the townships to the cities to the villages. And so there is a lot of money tied up there that will hopefully go back to the cities, money that's already been spent, and that we're hoping we will be reimbursed for. But I just wanted to give a practical explanation as to what that was. We're literally talking about hours of firefighters and making sure that they're paid for the work that they did.
Regarding COVID-19.
Yes.
Vaccinations. Yes, I didn't experience it, but I saw it in action, so I understand that action and the expense related to it. Okay, good.
Well, thank you for being
Anything
such a
else?
good, no, thank you for being
Thanks,
such a
gentlemen.
good sport, and letting us tap you on the shoulder for this conversation. And this was very important. Thank you, sir. I assume you're satisfied with the information you received? Okay, just wanted to be sure. Thank you, sir. Okay, I see Commissioner Galloway joining us. John, did you say you wanted to bring up be the anchor man here? Commissioner, oh my God, did I call you Commissioner Galloway? I'm calling everybody Commissioner today.
That's right. Well, you've got a one-track.
Auditor Galloway, Auditor
You've got a
Galloway.
one-track.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon,
Welcome.
Christopher Galloway, Lake County Auditor. First of all, fascinating discussion on the ARPA funding, one of my favorite topics. And as you know, that myself and my office has worked very closely with your office and Mr. Matus and your administrator on all these federal acts and how it's affecting the county. I would...
You put in about 3 or 4 minutes on that a day, maybe. Or...
Oh, yeah, a few minutes a day, yeah. So I would actually throw one more thing into consideration and tie the ARP conversation that just occurred with what I came here to talk about. And that is that currently within the federal legislation, and as either Mr. Leshnick or yourself pointed out, that we do not have final guidance from Treasury yet, and we are all waiting on that with bated breath. However, when you read the legislation, there is one thing that would be allowable at the county level to use those dollars with that I don't think enough are thinking about, and that is using those monies to offset a tax cut to Lake County taxpayers. And I say that, and your first blush may be, well, I thought that was explicitly disallowed. Actually, the language for that in the legislation is only contained in the portion as it relates to states and territories, not to counties or local governments.
You read the fine print.
So you could, this board could choose to, for example, rescind for a period of 3 years until 2024, the 1 mil of inside millage that is currently being leveled against taxpayers to help with county operations, and subsidize that with ARP funding. Based on current collections, over a 3-year period, that would represent about a $19.4 million usage of those dollars towards that tax cut. Because based on our current collections, it's like 6 point something and change over 3 years. You could give the residents of Lake County about a $19.4 million tax cut. And work budgetarily with Mr. Matus on figuring out how to transition beyond that. But that would be a big recommendation of mine, and justifiable, because as we all know, in the current housing market, that's very, very hot, driving prices through the roof in Lake County, Northeast Ohio, across the country, in large part driven by the lack of supply due to the pandemic. People have seen their home prices go up in value. So the reason I'll tie that all together for you, Mr. President, the reason I came today was to let you all know officially that my office has sent out notifications to all the parcel owners in Lake County, their valuations for 2021. As you are aware, we are required every 3 years to update the fair market value of all real property in the county and move forward into the next taxing year with those new values. 2021 is a triennial. This is a mass appraisal. It is a statistical sampling of sales between the years of 2018 and 2020. We've completed that work and mailed out now approximately 110,000 mailers to all the county residents to let them know what their new valuation would be based on the current market. Some questions that I've had, we set up a website as part of this process so that people can easily go and review their data. We have 2 dashboards that we built so that residents have full transparency. They can see everything that we were looking at. One is sales data in Lake County going back 3 years. And you can go in and you compare year-to-year individual property sales. People can go and look and play with it. The whole dashboard is there. The other dashboard that we put together, and there's a link on the website, is our sales ratio dashboard. And you can go in and look in the entire county, every neighborhood in Lake County, and see what the value changes were in that county, or rather in that neighborhood, that area, all the way across the county. So we've put all this information out there. Frankly, the first time we've ever done that as a county, to have full transparency and put everything in everybody's ability to look at it on a computer and to know the how and the why and the data that we go through. I do want to, just take a moment and, there's some questions that have arisen, emails, phone calls, and things of that nature. First and foremost, despite what everybody says and thinks, no, we do not take into consideration taxes, budgets, or any other element when it comes to determining this data. It's not a conversation, it is not a data point. My office, we are completely dispassionate on that point because that cannot be a part of it. Only thing that we are to consider is what is the actual sales data of the previous 3 years, and that is what we do. We are required to do that analysis. The the Ohio State Department of Taxation and Equalization also does an analysis of Lake County. We do 2 independent reviews and studies, and the state has to approve our numbers that we send out to you. If they do not approve them, we can't send them to you and we can't finalize. I can tell you that our analysis and Columbus's analysis was almost identical. Which should give people some element of, a good feeling that you have 2 independent bodies reviewing data points and coming to similar conclusions, so that there's not an element of, well, why did you choose this, or why did you decide this, and why did you decide that? That's done so that there are not 88 county auditors out there all off doing their own thing in each county, that there is some consistency and the state enforces that. So we've completed that process. Folks we're going to get this mailer. They'll be able to follow the directions in the mailer. Go to the website, your2021value.com, and they'll give them instructions on how to review that data, what it means in terms of their property. It'll also give them instructions on how, if they would like to have an informal review by my office of the value that's been assigned, tentatively assigned, they can make that request. They can submit it online, currently through our brand new Smart File portal, which this board was kind enough to fund last year, and we have actually just recently completed that about a month ago. So that is now live, so that people can apply and do all that online, submit documents. They do not need to come into our office. They can do it all electronically if they so choose. If they choose to want an in-person informal hearing, they can do that as well by calling my office. They can also a lot of folks are just asking for a phone review with one of our appraisers. So they can do it all over the phone, provide documents, and then schedule an appointment. We try to make this as easy and convenient for the taxpayers as possible. That is ongoing from September 1 until September 30th, the informal review process. We will complete that process, and then we are required to send a final abstract down to Columbus once we have completed by October 29th. And then they will do the old, Roman emperor, sort of thing, based on the work that we've done. So that's the process. And then after that, and I guess a lot of people, they think that these things are, entwined, and they are, but not in the way they think. Then after the November election, and we have approval on our abstract in the November election in terms of levies and things of that nature, then we start to calculate taxes. So tax calculation is not a component of what we do in terms of valuation. So then we do that in November and December to prepare tax bills that the county treasurer will send out in January of 2022. So that's the process, the overview. And also, I would add, anyone that doesn't like the answer that they get on their formal review, or they missed the deadline and they're not able to for any reason, there is still the board revision process next year between January 1st and March 31st to appeal your value. That is still on the table, and residents are allowed to do that. So you in essence get 2 bites at the apple under Ohio law. So that is the process. We are engaged in the middle of it. I appreciate all your support. I did get one question. I think you guys were even on the email today. We had a resident ask us about the mailer itself and why we didn't do it differently and the cost. I'm happy to say that our last triennial mailer cost the county about $60,000 for the whole program. This year's triennial is costing us about $48,000, and that's with postage increases, obviously, since the last triennial. So I think we've done a nice job of conserving dollars. We built the website and the dashboards with county staff, with IT, put it on our existing website at no additional cost to the county. So we've taken a lot of this on internally and really been able to save a lot of dollars in terms of that approach, which I'm very proud of. So that's where we are. I just wanted to give you guys an update. And I wanted to say back to the ARP thing, because of COVID, our housing market is hot and people are getting higher values on their property. Probably, more so than some would like, although we've had some calls that people have called and said, I think you've got my property too low. But for a lot of folks, that could, and I say could because it's not definitive based on, we all know how outside millage on tax calculations work, that some people could see an increase in taxes. This board could use ARP money to offset that in a housing market that's hot because of a pandemic. And I think that would be very justifiable action on the part of this board to make such a tax cut, to offset any potential increases that any resident might experience due to this. So that's where we are. Thanks for letting me share my 2 cents on the ARP. Thanks for letting me update you on the value. I'll open up for any questions that you guys may have.
Sure, something might go into a little deeper. Current taxes, current levies that are on the books, and the current value. It's usually attached to a dollar amount. So if somebody's property value goes up, I think that's where rollback comes in. So if they're, just to keep the numbers simple, if they're just getting $1 million and it goes up X percentage, and you would roll it back to whatever percentage of millage in order to get that dollar amount. You want to expand upon that?
Yeah, it's, and to be frank, I told somebody last night that emailed me questions about this sort of stuff. I said, someday I probably should give a TED talk about Ohio property taxes. I won't do that to you today. But suffice to say, to your point, it is a complex formula between things like the rollbacks on some levies, depending on when they were passed. If they're renewal, are they it really depends. Are they a new one? Are they a renewal? Did they exist before the state law changed on that stuff under Governor Kasich? You have homestead. You have, now a lot of folks don't realize when we have new construction offsets, to your point, outside millage, that's tied, those are the levies that folks vote on directly at the ballot box. Those are tied to specific dollar amounts. So values go up, for example, but that means that my office has to later this year actually reduce the actual the tax rates because it's tied, other than new construction, to the dollar amount that was passed. And so it is a very complex formula. So I think a lot of people say, like, well, it's just going to result in this. I've seen some misinformation online already this week about, well, if it's a 10% increase, it's a 10% increase in taxes. That is not accurate, and it is not necessarily the case. In fact, more so, probably not the case. It would be much less than that. And there are even potentially under that, all these different ins and outs of the formula, there are actually people that could potentially see a reduction, even as slight as it may be. I do think this year that based on the numbers that we're looking at in the housing market, most people will see some increase. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, as I told the News Herald when they asked me about it. I said, don't shoot the messenger. I just report the market, I don't make it. But that's where we are, and to your point, it's a very complex thing, and I would encourage residents that if they have questions to reach out to me and reach out to my office, and we can try to walk them through some of the ins and outs of that.
And that was pretty much an example of what the effective rate is. You know, that you may have passed a levy for this millage, but the effective rate is something less.
Correct.
And that's,
Good times.
yeah, always yeehaw.
All right.
Let's see, what else have we got for you? Commissioner Young, Commissioner Fleischnick? Wow.
I think it was well said.
My God, I stumped
There you go.
Well, I
You
do
stumped
agree.
the experts.
I do appreciate the time, and also, not only the public, but the three of you, if you need anything from me or my office, don't ever hesitate.
Thank you, sir, and appreciate all the assistance that you and your office have been giving throughout the entire pandemic effort. It has not gone unnoticed. It's very important. And thank
Team
you.
Lake County.
Team Lake County.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay, continue on to the public portion. And Mr. Music?
I'll wait till the end.
You'll wait till the end? Oh, we wore him out. Okay, anybody else in the audience? Our guests are thinking, please move on. Okay, thank you. They're smiling and laughing. That's good sports, good sports. Okay, well then we will close the first public comment portion. And without objection, Madam Clerk, can we please go to the items 12 and 13, please?
In special resolutions, resolution proclaiming September 2021 Prostate Cancer Awareness Month in Lake County, Ohio.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution proclaiming the week of September 12th through the 18th Direct Support Professional Recognition Week.
Move to approve.
I'll second that. And discussion? None being heard. Madam, oh, go please, come on up. Yeah, I was gonna say, here's your chance. We're just gonna get you up there.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Ann Mahler. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for the Lake County Board of Developmental Disabilities, Deepwood. And as the resolution states, it is our direct service professionals, or DSPs, and for short, a week, September 12th through the 18th. And if you don't know, just a real quick definition of what a direct service professional is, you know, we have individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities all through Lake County and of course the state of Ohio. And those individuals need lots of care in regards to personal hygiene, shopping, medical appointments, grocery shopping, you name it, they need help. And there are a lot of individuals that need 24-hour care. And so those are the direct service professionals that go in and give that care. And they give it in their homes, they are in residential facilities across the county, they're in day programs across the county. And you know, we knew the value of them before, but never so much was it apparent the value is when the pandemic hit. And everybody was home, they weren't. They went in and they were in those homes, they were in those sales facilities, and they were taking care of people because that's their lifeline for many of the individuals that receive the services. So we really can't thank them enough for all that they have done. So we appreciate the fact that you also have acknowledged that by your resolution. This year we are going to, through the county board, just be giving a little thank you, like swag bags, and we have just little like phone banks, some candy appreciation letter, little Bluetooth charger that we're going to be giving to all of the DSPs in Lake County. And we have about 1,300 direct service professionals in Lake County. So I just wanted to say thank you. I did bring Diane McCluskey. She is our ICF director. As you know, we have 2 in care facilities on campus, and she is the director of those facilities, and those are 24-hour facilities. So through COVID, the DD board was running the entire time, as well as many private providers across the county. So,
That's my Kate. And thank you so much for the proclamation and for the opportunity. I just want to share with you one more thing about our direct care staff. I have with me Tara Ross. She is, in fact, a direct care professional. And it's so much more than just providing attention to activities of daily living. She gets beyond that. It's looking at the heart and soul of who the person is, developing the relationships, and really knowing what they need and what's important to them, what's important for that person. The rapport and the relationship building that the direct care professionals have is something that you can't even imagine. Tiara even went as far as assuring that something this simple, that means so much. Favorite color. What is someone's favorite color? Well, you go into that bedroom and you will see that their bedding and their curtains and such match that blue. And what else does this person really like? They love to draw or erase. So she went ahead and made sure that one wall had that chalk paint on it because this particular individual just loves that erasing. So it's deeper than just helping somebody with those ADLs. It's a lot more that they do than just that direct care of ADLs. Assistance in daily living is much deeper. And she's one of our stellar right there deeply. So thank you.
I believe that would be empathy. It's more than just more than training. I think that is that fair to say that that's something that comes from the heart.
Yeah.
Please come on up because you know you're going to get handed this thing. So. It's okay. I believe the camera's off, so it's just us. So we're good.
Yes, it's something I learned growing up. We was always taught to be afraid of them, to never go near them, don't talk to them, and all that type of stuff. So working with them taught me to know they are human just like us. They have the same abilities like us. They just need a little more help. And sometimes people, they lack getting trained when they was younger because they felt like this is something that their brain cannot achieve when it could have if they got the right steps. So I like to just fill them out because they all have their own personality and talk to them, and it explains like what it is they like to do. Someone who's not verbal, and I just tell them like, he really don't mean to beat on us. He just wants to play with us. That's his way because he can't express it with his words. So I learned a lot within my 4 years working with them, and it have been great.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. When I was growing up, we had an elderly lady in the neighborhood. We all called her the Blue Lady because all of her clothes were blue, her house was blue, all of her plates were blue, but that was her color. And that was her thing. And if you wanted to do something nice, you'd give her a Christmas card with blue on it. Or you'd do something, if you would bring her groceries, make sure that there was something blue. It would make her day. Just that sensitivity. That's so good to see someone so young being so sensitive. So thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Anything you want to add to this?
Mr. President, I would just say that I've had the opportunity to visit Deepwood's campus more than a few times, so I've gotten to see firsthand your hard work, your care, your compassion for all of your residents because they live there. It's their home, and you recognize this is not just a medical care facility, it's a home, which is why when we've seen some of your residents come to our commissioners' meetings to talk on issues relevant to folks with disabilities and residents in Lake County who have unique challenges, they've always expressed that they view Deepwood as their home and Lake County as their family. And that's because of, to use the antiseptic term, the direct support professional, but in reality it's because of the caring people who work every day at Deepwood to make sure that it's not just a hospital or a place where needed care is given, but it is a home. So, from Christmas in July, I've seen that more than 1 year, to the birthday parties that you've hosted. You recognize that life is about a lot more than treatment or psychology. It's about giving people a full place in society and recognizing that some of us are more able than others, and we all have our advantages and disadvantages, but we all have a right to be a full member of the community. But that's only possible because of your help, hard work, and sacrifice. So I hope that this small piece of paper, this certificate, is a meaningful statement on our part that we recognize what you do for our community, because we're all neighbors here, and while we meet life with different challenges, there are some saints among us who help us to all appreciate life. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I want to thank you also. I think what you do is amazing. Helping find the humanity in someone, helping them discover things about themselves, helping them express that humanity, share with the world. I don't think there's a higher calling. So what you do is appreciated, and thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes, thank you. Now, of course, you know there's going to have to be a picture taken here, right? Commissioner Plechnik's not going to be happy with me. Go on up.
We've been looking back about 20 years and say what she had on that map.
Congratulations. Yay. We good? Oh, thank you.
Okay, just take a couple. Okay, good.
Congratulations.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you for your support.
Thank you for being here. Always good to see you. And
Truly appreciate your patience with us.
thank you for coming out.
Part of our agenda.
Thanks. Yep.
Think about it this way.
Okay, now, Madam Clerk, if you want to return to item number 1, please.
In the Utilities Department, resolution increasing appropriations and transferring cash within Lake County Department of Utilities Sewer Operating Fund and Project Fund 596, Project 454S, Arcola Creek Bennett Road Trunk Sewer Improvement.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution certifying unpaid sewer and water subs and administrative charges to the Lake County Auditor.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing appropriations and transferring cash within Lake County Department of Utilities Water Operating Fund and Project Fund 595, Orchard Road Waterline Replacement 432W.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving final estimate number 5, release of retainage in the amount of $20,395.48 with Davis Diggers Incorporated and accepting a 3-year maintenance bond in the amount of $51,626.95 for Green Drive Waterline Replacement Project 423W for the Lake County Department of Utilities.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Randy, you want to give us some background on that?
Sure, this is part of our capital improvement plan. This is just how we finalize our projects by approving the final estimate and accepting a maintenance bond to make sure that it functions as it was designed for the next 3 years. The contractor is responsible for that.
Fair enough, but now this is the part where you get to say how well the project has gone.
Project went very well. Davis Diggers and we have a good relationship, and they did a wonderful job. And it's a brand new water line that should last another 75 to 100 years.
And it's always good when the community is not up in arms, and they seem to be very happy that it's there.
They do.
We've been hearing a lot of good stuff on this one, so I'm trying to give you the floor here. I know we're running a little long, but you know, good news never travels as fast as bad news, so well done. Thank you. Gentlemen, anything else on this? No? Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution rejecting the bids received on August 4th, 2021 for Hazel Avenue Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Project 402S.
Second.
And discussion, Randy?
We've talked several times over the last several months about the fluctuating material costs and the timeliness of it, and this project is, I think, a result of that. Previously, we were getting 8 or 10 bidders for every project. The projects that were coming in at about 10 to 20% less than what the engineer's estimate was. and we were getting a lot of projects done. The last couple of projects that we bid have only had 1 or 2 bidders, and significantly higher than what our engineer's estimate was, and this is one of those. So we'll regroup and take a look at the project and the availability of materials and rebid sometime in the future.
And just going over this for the benefit, we're looking at the estimated cost was going to be $470,698. It looks like we received 1 bidder, and that came in at $611,508. And I don't think that was, a swing and a miss on the engineering side of things. I think directly, as you pointed out, just market.
It is, yeah. The availability of materials, like we've stated in the past, we're advertising these for bid, and we're not entering into a contract for about 60 days or so. And typically suppliers will be able to hold those prices for 60 or 90 days. Right now, we're getting word from suppliers and from contractors that the typical time frame for holding a price is about 7 days. So we're putting in a bid and hoping for the best, and that's a very high risk for contractors, obviously, and high risk for us.
And one of the other concerns that I'm just going to say, since it looks like we only have 1 bidder, or other contractors giving an indication that when they see the estimated cost, they know what our flexibility is? Are they just not bidding? It's not worth their time?
I think that's a big part of it, yeah.
Got it. Very good. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In Job and Family Services Department, resolution approving Lake County Department of Job and Family Services vouchers, date of warrant September 10, 2021, in the amount of $109,389.21.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Commissioner's Office, resolution revising the Lake County Board of Commissioners regular meeting schedule.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Finance Department, resolution approving payment of bills as listed on the Commissioner's Approval Journal in the amount of $953,484.26.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving purchase orders as listed on the Commissioner's Purchase Order Approval Journal in the amount of $701,718.46.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing and decreasing appropriations for various non-general fund accounts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution transferring cash and appropriations within various non-general fund accounts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. All right, moving on to departmental reports. Utilities. Randy.
Thank you, Commissioner. We often talk here about what a wonderful resource Lake Erie is in providing a consistent, reliable source of water for Lake County and really all along the coast of Ohio, the north coast of Ohio. It does have its challenges at times. It's my understanding, if you've been down to the lake in the last 12 hours or so, it's not a pretty sight or smell right now. There's been an event where quite a few fish are washed up on the shore. It's my understanding that the Willowwood Fire Department just received about 60 complaints for odors, and they thought it was actually a gas issue down there. But what it is every year, several times a year, the water will turn over and cause sediment and that sort of thing, and low oxygen water to move around. Typically, it only lasts maybe a few hours, and it's very easily controlled and not really noticeable. Every few years, it's a significant event, and that's what we're dealing with today. Not only along the shore, but also in our water intake. So since about midnight last night, The temperature of the water's dropped about 12 degrees, and along with that is lower oxygen and odors and some discoloration of the water coming into the plant. We've been treating it we just did an upgrade about a year ago to increase our ability to feed carbon into the water to help treat the water. But likely there will be some point in the near future, maybe this afternoon or tomorrow, where some of that treated water, but it's safe to drink, but it will possibly have some taste and odors component to it. It is safe to drink. There could also be some discoloration. So we've been working hard. Our employees are working double shifts right now to make sure that this is all taken care of. We want to let everybody know that could be something that's coming along soon. We are in contact with Cleveland, with the City of Painesville, with Aqua, Ohio, Fairport Harbor, and they're all experiencing the same situation. So I want to give you an update on that.
And just to give a little bit of background, our system is in as good a shape as any. The water inlet is, it's not that it's old or it's in too shallow of a location or too close to the shore. This is just one of these occurrences. I hate to be dismissive of it, but this is a naturally occurring. And the fish are essentially suffocating.
Exactly.
So, and again, this is all within EPA guidelines of how the water is being treated, and it's still within all the necessary specifications for potable water.
It is correct.
Mr. President,
Sir.
I think it's important to underline that while we may experience some discoloration or other issues with the tap water, that it is still safe to drink. So we're not talking about a boil alert or anything along those lines. So definitely want to emphasize still safe. We're very grateful to our Department of Utilities for monitoring the situation to make sure that we're putting safety first and keeping people apprised as to why they may experience some discoloration or changes in the taste in their tap water. We're certainly hopeful that this naturally occurring event will resolve itself shortly because it is an inconvenience, but fortunately it's not a safety issue at this point, and of course we'll be working with our Department of Utilities to keep people posted.
And one other question, I know when they do work on pipes and you get the iron in the water, that you got to be careful about doing laundry, discoloring. Is there any potential for discoloration of clothing for laundry purposes? To figure, as long as we're getting the message out there, let's...
Sure. This is different from the flushing events and iron that gets into the pipe. This is, as far as doing laundry, I'd say use your own judgment. I don't have an exact answer for that.
Fair enough, just figured as long as we're entering into the discussion, we'll just throw it out there, so wash your clothes at your own risk. My concern is that, somebody, laundering your white shirt, next thing you know, it comes out a lovely peachy color there, so.
Mr. President?
Randy's the wise one, he's just hushing.
Laundry aside, when do you expect that this oxygen event will cease and will cease to experience issues with our water flow?
At the beginning of the meeting, I was in contact with the director of water. He's out at the plant, and it was turning around. The temperature started coming back up. There's no guarantee of that, but it appears that it is getting better. However, since it had started about midnight, and measures that we start making less water when this starts happening, so we don't have as much of this low oxygen water in the system. But at some point, when the tanks start to drain and we're using all that water, we've got to turn it back up.
Mm-hmm.
Since midnight, we've probably made 8 or 10 million gallons of water, of safe drinking water. So that at some point will have to be pushed through the system.
So even though this low oxygen event is probably ending, we still have water that we've produced, that we've treated during the event, and that has to work its way through the system.
Exactly.
Would it be fair to say that in the next couple of days this should resolve itself?
If the trend keeps going the way it is, I'd say yes. Within probably a day and a half or so, yeah.
Thank you.
About 14 or 18 hours.
Very good. Anything else for utilities? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Job and Family Services. Suzanne.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. No report today out of Job and Family Services.
Very good, thank you, ma'am. County Administrator Jason Boyd.
Good morning, or geez, good afternoon, Commissioners. Have it. Just real briefly, we talked a couple weeks ago about the census data. David Rodaschi will have a presentation in the coming weeks, but he did send me a note. I know Commissioner Pleszczyk noted we're one of the few counties that did indeed grow, and he's right. Only 33 out of 88 counties experienced a population increase from 2010 to 2020, and we were one of them, so that is a good takeaway and some of the earlier reviews of the data that Mr. Redress shared with me. Secondly, I was in Akron this morning with the Northeast Ohio Summit of the County Commissioners Association. To the point of the conversation with Mr. O'Keefe and the ARPA funds, a lot of frustrated counties with the lack of timely final guidance from Treasury. A lot of counties, urban and rural and in between, are waiting to see what the final rules are so we can begin to put an expenditure plan in place. We're not alone there. And finally, it's been some time, but just wanted to keep the Commissioners apprised that the Coastal Special Improvement District, the SID, is essentially up and running. If you recall, that's a voluntary program by which private landowners along the coast can do a special assessment on their property taxes to help with erosion control concerns at the private level. The county, Mike and I have been involved in meetings the past couple of years on assisting with that, and that is a formal organization. I think Mayor Morley may be the chairman. Council Amanda Gordon has helped put that together. So just a brief update that the Coastal SID is up and running. Thank you.
On that SID discussion, I believe, was it the City of Euclid that was also wanting to see if they...
Yeah, the City of Euclid is kind of piggybacking on our strategy, but just due to two different county auditors, and as it's an assessment, it's not a one-to-one match as far as a piggyback on it, but they are following the model that Lake County put forth, which is the first in the state of Ohio as far as putting, quick history, we had to have all 13 contiguous lakefront communities sign on this endeavor for it to make it work, and we got that done, so. Thanks.
Well, and all I hate is that you've done a lot of heavy lifting, as has Mike Matus, our Budget Finance Director, and our team here is, again, setting standards. I believe it's safe to say this is the largest shoreline improvement district along the shore of Lake Erie, I believe is.
I think it's, yeah, I believe so.
So we're nothing else, we're stitching it together.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And hold on, don't run away here. Lost my thoughts, so I guess you can't run away because, yeah, go while you still can. There you go, thank you. Okay, moving on to finance. Mike, anything? No report, Mike Matus?
No report.
No report, sir? Very good. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Yes, I wanted to mention that the resolution revising the commissioners' meeting schedule has to do with the meeting next week, which was supposed to be on Thursday, September 9th. That meeting has been canceled. And then, so our next meeting is actually going to be Thursday, September 16th at 10 a.m. And also in October, our meeting for October 14th is canceled, but that week we're going to add one on the 12th. So we're going to switch from Thursday to Tuesday, October 12th at 10 a.m. And this will be posted online for everybody.
Very good, thank you, ma'am. Okay, legal.
No reports, Commissioner.
Thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to old business. Any old business got it for the board?
Mr. President?
Sir.
First of all, we've had some discussions about how we can better organize our meetings so that we don't have department heads who have specific reports to give here for elongated public portions, but we still give everyone the opportunity to express themselves fully. And so I had proposed that we have some time limits on the first public portion while continuing to allow people to speak. Perhaps without limit is not the best term, but without a set limit in the second public portion. That ensures that we're not spending taxpayer dollars on department head salaries to be sitting through long discussions, allowing us to get the business done, but still giving people the opportunity to speak to their commissioners as long as they need to share their concerns. So hopefully we'll have that policy in front of the commissioners by the next meeting. I think that we have a solid draft, but the principle is to have a 5-minute limit per person during the first public portion, but still give people the opportunity to speak as long as needed in the second portion. And that'll prevent folks from having to leave the meeting before they can present to go work or run their departments. That way we still have a full and fair discussion of all the resolutions on the agenda. So I look forward to bringing that forward in the very near future. But that's what I wanted to share, Mr. President.
Excellent, excellent, thank you. We do have our sheriff with us. We had a couple of concerns that came out of our passing of the resolution for additional deputies for Perry Township regarding our work with our colleagues, the Painesville Township trustees. I just wanted to make sure we have a brief discussion on that, again, in public, so that everything's 100% legit. I'm going to look legal. There's the ongoing question that the sheriff and the Board of Commissioners just make sure that we're meeting our statutory requirement under the Ohio Revised Code to be maintaining the peace based on the review of the past and the review of current circumstances. Prosecutor Colson is comfortable that the sheriff and the board are properly taking actions to meet that requirement?
Absolutely.
Okay. And Sheriff, you're not seeking additional funding from the Board of Commissioners to do anything additional. You're comfortable with the staffing under the requirement for maintaining the peace. Any suggestion to the contrary would not be accurate, and such words would not cross your lips. You're sitting in the back room indicating we're good. You agree with that? Okay. And we are in receipt of a response from our friends in Painesville Township. They do have some unique additions or modifications. I don't quite understand some of those, but I believe there may be a misconception between community policing and meeting our statutory requirement. I think we're doing okay. Perhaps we should resend them our original document. Maybe we might want to send them it's a public record what Perry Township had accepted. We had moved very quickly on that. I don't think Perry Township required any major modifications or anything substantial. I'm going to look to legal on their contract as it was proposed. Is that a reasonable statement, sir?
My understanding and recollection is that Perry Township signed off on the contract as drafted by our office.
Okay, and that was the sheriff's office working with the township to provide policing, and it was also working with the Board of Commissioners on a grant program that's substantially being funded by our clerk of courts, Faith Andrews. So they're picking up two. We're picking up two for a period of 4 years, the grant period. They're going to be working to secure funding to continue that level of service and perhaps expand it as the sheriff and they see fit. Is that reasonable? I'm looking to both legal and the sheriff on that. Sheriff, did you want to comment, sir?
The grant proposal is to supply temporary funding to townships to meet the need for policing at the current time, with the objective that alternative funding will be found to pay for those additional deputies through the grant funding. There should be no misconception. The grant is a grant. It's not, well, maybe the sheriff could charge us less money for cars or less money for people or less money for uniforms or less money. Those costs are consistent. We have a certain cost for cars, cost for uniforms, cost for dispatching, liability, gas, repairs, all training, all of those things are consistent no matter what township you live in, the police costs are the same that we incur. And so those are consistent. So to vary those in a grant program doesn't make sense. The costs are what they are.
Very good, thank you, sir. Anything for the sheriff?
Mr. President, first and foremost, I really want to thank our sheriff for his hard work in maintaining the peace and maintaining safety, not just in the townships, but in all of Lake County. I know that this is a difficult business and a difficult time to be in law enforcement, but you have shown the highest support and concern for all of Lake County, and we're really grateful to have you here. And really grateful for your partnership with our Clerk of Courts in being able to provide the COPS grant program. It's not easy to find money for any municipality, and so I know it was an extraordinary effort on your part, the commissioners, the Clerk of Courts, and we've really seen the success of that in Perry Township, so a big thank you.
Indeed. Thank you, Sheriff. Christian, anything?
No, not at this point. Thank you, Sheriff.
But Mr. President, just generally,
Oh, yes, sir.
You had mentioned that there was some implication that the sheriff's office was not meeting their statutory obligation under the Ohio Revised Code. I've asked before, but for the sake of completeness, I'll ask our county prosecutor's office again. Is it your opinion that the sheriff's office is meeting their statutory obligation?
Sheriff Liam Bruno is meeting his statutory obligations under Title III by maintaining or securing the peace in the townships and across the county.
And that's the position of our county prosecutor's office?
Absolutely, preserving the peace.
Thank you so much. I mean, I really do think it's important to make sure that we're clear on that point, because I know that to all the deputies who serve Lake County, it could be interpreted very negatively to have a suggestion that they're not meeting their statutory obligation. And so I just want to emphasize, underline, bold, bullet point, however I can draw attention to the fact that it's not just the position of the sheriff, but our county prosecutor's office, who are tasked as our counsel, that indeed our deputies, our sheriff, their office are meeting their obligation under the ORC. And I certainly share that position, but I felt it was important just to highlight that. I really do believe that common sense has to be our guiding light in issues like this, and common sense shows us what is fundamentally fair. I know that every municipality looks for funding sources when they're paying for their priorities, and there is no higher priority in Lake County than law enforcement, whether you're talking about Perry Township, Painesville Township, Willoughby Hills. I think we all share that as one of our highest priorities. But at the same time, we have to recognize that we can't just kick the can and say it's someone else's responsibility. The folks in Willoughby Hills have the obligation to pay for their policing. The folks in Perry Township have the obligation to pay for their policing. And I think that we rightly commend Perry Township for working with the county, the Clerk of Courts, and the Sheriff's Office for being the first to take advantage of the COPS grant so they can add more safety to their community and really benefit their residents in that way. At the same time, it's just important to underline that it would never be a fair suggestion that folks in Willoughby pay for folks in Leroy, or folks in Painesville Township pay for the policing in Willoughby Hills. The commissioners are not pushing for that. It also wouldn't be fair, as the sheriff said, to charge one township a different rate for deputies than another. We really need to extend the same cost structure to every township, and I'm confident from my review of the sheriff's numbers that he's simply relaying the operational costs, not including the overhead, and really the police department headquarters for the county. You know, we all have police departments in our cities as well as in Madison Township. That is the jail. And while it would be very easy as a commissioner to try to kick that can and say, I think that because this is the official police department of the townships that we should ask for a contribution, I don't hear anyone at this dais suggesting that the township should have to make a special assessment or contribution to pay for the jail. That's a challenge that the commissioners have taken on, and I think rightly so. But at the same time, I'm always concerned when I hear an insinuation that the cities or villages should be forced to pay for policing, even though the law clearly does not require it. I've heard some people suggest that there's a legal requirement. I've asked our prosecutor's office time and time again. The response we've gotten is no, there's not. Would you confirm?
Yes, that's correct, Commissioner. Again, it's preserving the peace with regard to townships. They're not required to respond to patrol the area, be detectives, anything like that. Emergency situations, crime that take place in their presence, yes, they act on that.
So given that the law is satisfied, we're really talking about issues of fairness. This is not some crazy legal loophole where the city of Willoughby or the city of Mentor is forced to pay for the township of Paynesville or the township of Concord. The legal obligations are being met. So what we're talking about when we work hard to provide a COPS grant, or when we're talking about the cost structure extended to the township for the deputies, is fairness, which is why the sheriff and the commissioners have always charged the same price to all the townships, have offered the same grant program to all the townships, and why we can't, give a special deal to one versus the other. It really does come down to fairness, just as we can't reasonably expect Willoughby or Willoughby Hills to pay for Perry or Leroy Township's policing. That's why, if and to the extent, and I've heard some township trustees make creative arguments about why cities or villages should pay for their policing. I certainly respect their position, but I really feel that future, negotiation or issues along those lines really should be brought to mayors and managers. Our county auditor, when he was a township trustee, was instrumental in bringing the trustees to that organization, so they do have a seat at the table. And if all the mayors and managers from the cities and villages of Lake County were to come to the commissioners and say that we want to subsidize policing in the townships, I don't think that would likely happen, because I don't think their taxpayers would approve. But if it were, that would change the discussion. But I really think that when you're asking for the cities and villages to make that major expenditure, it should be brought directly to them, because you're really asking them to make that fiscal sacrifice. And if they were, and I don't anticipate it, but if they were to come back and say, here's the unanimous resolution from mayors and managers, the cities and villages believe that folks in Willoughby, Willoughby Hills, Mentor really do want to pay for the policing in the townships, then I think we'd have a different discussion. But I don't think it would be appropriate for the sheriff or the commissioners to impose that obligation on cities and villages without their discussion, input, approval. So I would say to people who are still interested in this discussion, I think that this really has to happen in mayors and managers, where the commissioners are invited as well. We're part of that discussion and debate, but I don't think it's fair to impose a tax obligation on the cities and villages without their input.
Thank you, sir. One other clarification I just want to make, though, that some people are also using a metric of 911 calls automatically equaling an emergency. They do not necessarily equal an emergency. A barking dog is not an uncommon call to 911. A damaged mailbox is not an uncommon call to 911. A noise complaint is not an uncommon call to 911. So it's very conditional, and the definition of an emergency is plain, and we can't just redefine things by saying, well, it came in on an emergency line. Well, yeah, let's just be there. Also, just for my colleagues, hopefully consent, I did get a phone call during the meeting. I obviously didn't take it, from Trustee Hillier from Paynesville Township. I assume that the discussion that we had here, as long as he and I have our conversation within the confines of what we've discussed here, would be to your approval, and not changing anything. The price is the price, and the grant program is the grant program. I think, is that a simple way to convey the message from this board? Because I think we should give a response back to our friends in the township. And I think since we received something in writing, we should probably give something back in writing, and perhaps have our county administrator respond back. And I don't know if the sheriff, you want to get in on that, or just take a look at what Jason's going to send. But I think we should respond that we appreciate their suggested changes, but the program is the program, the contract is the contract. Some of the suggested changes would be, Commissioner Young?
Yeah, I just want to say that I think that what they're suggesting is not outside the pale. Otherwise, it's not something. What I mean by that is simply that although we, at this point in time, can't afford to meet all those request. Hiring still more policing resources at the county level, it would be very difficult immediately at this time. But still, I think it was a reasonable request. I think it was done in the spirit of assisting the county in its operations, making Lake County an even safer place. So in that regard, I appreciate their recommendations. But as you say, Mr. President, the deal is the deal. And I'm afraid we really stretched ourselves in the confines of what was offered. So I agree with you. I believe John Plesnick does as well. Commissioner Plesnick. So I'd like to move forward and extend our offer once again, which I think is really generous.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
And Mr. President, I would just say again, it really was remarkable how the clerk of courts came forward. Once again, how many politicians, elected officials return money for the support of law enforcement, the support of the county, just give it back. It's really remarkable how hardworking her staff has been to generate a surplus, to contribute it back for important community priorities like this. And I think it would have been very easy for the commissioners to say, it is what it is. You have the obligation legally to pay for policing in your municipality and left it at that, but I'm really grateful to Commissioner Young, to yourself, to the sheriff, to the clerk of courts, really to our whole staff for saying, we're not going to leave it there. We're going to go above and beyond. We're going to find some money so we can help the townships build a bridge to the future, increase safety in the east end of the county. And it really was a remarkable achievement that we saw when Perry was the first township to adopt. So I'm hopeful that this will be helpful to all of the townships. And I believe it really is a testament to Lake County that instead of just saying, the law doesn't require any more, we went above and beyond.
And just in the interest of clarity, I'm hearing two things from my colleagues. I'm hearing Commissioner Pleshnik as far as we're meeting our statutory requirements, and the policing is a separate statute under the law which permits the sheriff to enter into a contract. The grant program, I'm going to use the term as a bridge to help our townships get from where they are to where the sheriff believes they should be with policing. I agree and support that. I am concerned though, because this sort of echoes Commissioner Young, when you talk about hiring additional deputies to be in the townships. I'm very concerned our sheriff has not asked that. Our prosecutor has not directed us to do that. To say if money's become available, to Commissioner Pleshnik's point, the cities and the township, or the cities and the villages subsidizing the townships, I'm concerned about that. We've got Madison Township, who has for at least 5 decades had their own police department. I'm uncomfortable with being generous to townships that are as large, if not larger than most of our cities. So Sheriff, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but
I should probably comment on that. I think it was understood, Mr. President.
Oh, please, thank you.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting we hire more folks at the county level. I think the offer was made with the right intentions, from their perspective, to make the county a safer place to live and work. So I would not be supportive of hiring more sheriffs at the county level at this point. The sheriff decided to make a choice for a case for that. I'd certainly be open to listening. But at this point, given the information I have, I'm not supportive of such an initiative. But that doesn't change the fact that I believe their intentions were done with the right respect and the right attitude.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
And Mr. President, I'd be remiss if I didn't echo Commissioner Young. I believe that the township trustees are advocating hard for their community, which they should do. From my perspective, we have to have a full and fair conversation on these issues, and that any time you're asking a sacrifice of someone else, they have to be part of the conversation. So that's why I say really the appropriate forum for someone who wants to advocate for a subsidy for the cities and the villages really should be in mayors and managers, because I would never want to exclude the other leaders in the community from that discussion. But I absolutely agree with Commissioner Young that the trustees are fighting hard for their community, and as a councilman, you better believe that I'd be here asking for as much support from the county, the state, the federal government, and the moon, whatever I could do. You know, as councilman for Willoughby Hills, I was their #1 booster, and it's right and just that they do that for their community too. So I agree with Commissioner Young. It was brought, I think, with the best of intentions, and I know our board is just trying to fairly administer our role in the process, but I really do think it's important that when a municipality is interested in asking for something from another municipality, we take advantage of the organizations we have in this county. And not everyone may be aware that mayors and managers is really the place to go. If you're trying to get a consensus, you know, that the townships are at a disadvantage to cities and villages, you can learn more about charters and becoming a city or a village. You can get buy-in from the current mayors and cities and villages. So if you want a fundamental change in the community, I really think it's important to have a consensus and to bring everyone to the table, because just as a township trustee rightly advocates for their community, we can't ignore the council people, the city managers, the mayors either. They all deserve to be heard.
Just to vet out one last item here, hopefully, backup in the form of mutual aid, that's normal, it's necessary. Deputies and officers of the law have to know that if they need help, it's coming. Doesn't matter from what city or village or township. Officer safety is paramount, and sometimes there are situations where one community will be sending an officer or multiple officers in response to a situation. That is normal practice. It is essential. Again, officers need to know that if they need help, it's on the way. And so any discussion to the contrary that would restrict that activity, that would be a security guard or a mall cop. Nothing against folks who work in a mall maintaining operations, but officers of the law, they operate at a very different standard and they have different authorities. So I just want to make sure that everybody is at least on the same page, that we are fully in support of our officers as far as backup and the freedom to do what they need to do as they are directed to do. That's reasonable to say. Okay. Anything further on that subject? Okay. Well, I won't jinx us in the future when I say I'll briefly talk about this. All right. Moving on. Is there any other old business? Moving on to new business. I got a good one. It was actually very timely just today. Commissioner Pleshnik and I had the pleasure of joining Congressman Joyce. He had put together a very informative discussion. It was representatives from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cyber Security and Infrastructure Security Agency, Region 5. It was impressive, eye-opening, and the most eye-opening part of it is we literally have, and this is almost going to sound like a joke, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. These folks really are sincere. They are making themselves available both to local government, but to local businesses, both large and small. And that was one of the unique discussions. We've had the news media capturing our attention over large mega companies, but the small businesses, medium businesses, the mom and pop shops, they are also having some significant ransomware issues. That's kind of a recent occurrence. And candidly, I think one of the statements was, well, you know, okay, so you don't go for $1 billion here, but you pick up a few hundred or a few thousand here and there, and you multiply that over a number of victims. Now you're talking some real money. That was very impressive. Commissioner Pleshnik, anything you want to add to that?
Mr. President, I would just add that in addition to small and mid-sized businesses, we were warned directly that local governments are increasingly being targeted. So my takeaway was that Ohio has a representative from the Department of Homeland Security that provides free services, and I use the word free in quotes because obviously our tax dollars fund the federal government, but already paid for services that we can take advantage of with our preparedness So I've already passed along the contact information to our county IT department, and this is a resource that our local governments need to be made aware of, because we've seen townships, school districts being held hostage, just like businesses, with ransomware and other attacks. It's something that's going to become increasingly important over time, certainly has been to this point, and I was grateful that our congressman brought several local governments, school districts, educators together to consider these issues and give us a better sense that these resources are available from DHS. They're already paid for. We need to take advantage of them at the local level.
Very good, thank you. Okay, any other new business to come before the board? Okay, all right, at the risk of John, your last man standing, or at least in this case sitting, we are now at the second public comment portion.
I'll make it quick.
Wish to, no, don't, take your time, we'll.
Okay, John Music, 45 Coventry Drive, Painesville Township. I am here since we don't have a meeting next week. I was going to bring it up next week, but a week from this Saturday is 9/11. 20 years ago, you know what happened in New York there. And that is something that we should never ever forget. Ever since we moved it, it was moved to Veterans Park here in Painesville. I've helped. And when you go there, and we started, and everybody's invited, just on the 11th, 7 o'clock in the morning, we start putting flags in the ground. And when you put those in, you know, somebody will say, oh, look at all those flags. No, just like when Jobs and Family Services does once a year, they put pinwheels out. They used to do it in the park, and now it's in front of their buildings. And the thing about it is, that is a name and a face of somebody that died that day. And it's something we never, ever, ever want to forget. So I just want to say, 7 o'clock on the 11th, come help us put the flags in. And there will be speakers. And all I can say is, I know I will never forget that day. Thank you.
Well said, thank you, sir.
Mr. President.
Sir.
First of all, thank you, John, because it's so important that as a society, as a county, we remember the terror that struck our country now 20 years ago. It's amazing how the time has gone by, but in particular, the incredible bravery of our first responders, our police, our firefighters, who stepped up to respond to that terror with unconditional love and concern for their fellow Americans. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking of one person in particular from Lake County, from my little home in Willoughby Hills, our fire captain, Sandra Lesko. I remember seeing an interview, I haven't been able to find it, but seeing an interview where she said that she and her dog were watching the TV as the Twin Towers fell. And she looked at her dog, Gondo, her canine, and said, we have to go there and help. And she volunteered to go and rescue the people, pull the bodies out of the rubbish. And not long after, her canine, her dog, Gondo, died of cancer. And not long after that, Captain Lesko was diagnosed with very serious cancer that ultimately claimed her life as well. So we have a local hero in her. We have someone who gave her life to protect fellow Americans that day. And so I know that that's one of many, many, many stories of police and firefighters, of first responders, of neighbors who stepped up that day in response to that horrible act of terror. But I think that Lake County in particular, we remember a couple of folks who volunteered to go up there and really put their lives on the line, and in many cases gave their lives. So there's no more important date to remember in American history, and I'm grateful that you raised it today, John.
Thank you, Commissioner Fletcher. Okay, yeah, that's sad, but, sir, yes. Ask.
I promise this will be 2 minutes. I just, Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive. Lobbies for Citizens have been reviewing the property tax levies that are on the November 2nd ballot. We have asked for records requests from the Lake Metro Parks and the Lakeland Community College. I wanted to report to the commissioners that both political subdivisions have been extremely transparent and extremely prompt in providing any and all information. So I'd like to publicly thank them. That's extremely important. As far as Lake Metro Parks, so looking at their financial statements, I see a pretty well-run organization. They're pretty strong financially and don't have any trouble paying their bills. However, Lakeland Community College, I just want to give you a heads up. You may want to take a look at that, their financial statements. I know that you, I believe you appoint 3 of their board members. We did write an article on the Lobbyists for Citizens that you can see all of the information. But what concerns me is that their enrollment has steadily gone down. In round numbers in 2010, they had about a little less than 10,000 students for the fall semester. And then round numbers for 2020, that is about, I think it's 5,755 or 5,800 in round numbers. So that's a constant decline in student enrollment. Also, what I'm concerned about is that their net equity position, the net position as of 6/30 was a negative $27 million. So you may want to talk to Mr. Matus, about that. Because I'm concerned that they're looking for a renewal, and that renewal brings in about $8 million to them. If that renewal is not passed, they're going to have some trouble paying their bills, I dare say. So I just mention it to you. I don't think you necessarily maybe have the authority to do anything. They run it on their own. They have their own board. But I'm just raising a flag that says that there's a potential problem there. Thank you.
Out of curiosity, the demographics of those students, are we talking like the community development programs? Because I know they moved away from that. Were those?
I don't know. The numbers that I cited came from the State of Ohio State Higher Education website. So there was no specifics as far as where they're from, that sort of thing. So I can't really answer that. I'm just giving you the raw numbers that I found on the website.
Just
No. Well, let me just put some.
Just
Quick question here. The total population of staff or whatnot. Because I think you can kind of get a feel for student-teacher ratios, all that stuff. I haven't heard that they've been reducing staff. Have they been reducing staff?
I don't have those numbers, but what I did get was the compensation packages for, I did receive 19 of their administrative staff. I asked for the compensation. I didn't ask for their pension and or their fringe benefits. Let's say they're handsomely paid. They're not underpaid. But be that as it may, again, I'm just saying we need to be aware that if there's a declining enrollment, that tells me that something is happening. I have heard that the students are going to Lorraine Community College because it appears that Lakeland has not been responsive to the manufacturing sector of Lake County. I don't have any statistics on that, but that's what I'm being told. And therefore, there are some of the private sector has to create their own schools that is not being provided from Lakeland. So if the renewal levy does not pass, I would think that the board would see that as a big signal that they've lost the confidence of the taxpayers in Lake County. And they're not being responsive enough to the community, in my opinion.
And a quick follow-up, if I may. The students are enrolled at the Holden Center, the 4-year program. Do they still get counted as Lakeland students?
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that.
I'm just trying to better understand why, because that almost half, that's, yeah, okay, and Lakeland's near and dear to me, that's, I started out there, so.
So I just bring it to your attention that you may want to do some additional investigation on that.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Young.
Well, I would have, my question was the enrollment drop was so sharp over that period.
It's not like a cliff. It is a constant decline. I did create a chart on that.
You know, I just want to throw this in the hours late. As you look at our high school enrollments over the years, those have been dropping off dramatically as well. So it could just be a matter of population shifts. We're getting older and growing out as many young people. I haven't done the math. I know that Mentor, for instance, their population used to be around 3,000, now it's under 2,000.
I would then, my retort to that would be that we don't need to spend the same amount of dollars.
Yes, I hear you.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, any additional public comments? No takers? Okay, this brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. I will say, though, enjoy your vacation, Commissioner Young. You deserve it. Yay. So, if there's nothing further, Commissioner?
No, just travel safe and see you at the next round.
Okay, and with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
I'll let Jennifer sort that by the nose. Okay, on that one, I'm going to hush. Any comments, discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. Thank you. This meeting stands adjourned. I appreciate your time today. I was going to say, wait, no, we're not starting all over again.